Hello, everyone. My name is Adeolu Idowu, and I'm an associate here at Aluko and Oyebode. It's Data Privacy Week, and today I'm going to be having a very interesting chat, not a seminar, but a very interesting discussion with the firm's managing partner, who is Adeolu Idowu. She also heads the governance, risk and compliance department, and she's ready to answer all the questions I have, particularly because we're celebrating Data Privacy Week. So stay tuned.
So good afternoon, everyone, or whatever time it is that you're watching this. My name is Adeolu Idowu, and I'm the co-managing partner at Aluko and Oyebode. And as Oyinfo said, I head the governance, risk and compliance team. I think in terms of, the interesting thing about myself, my initials are AI. And so I get a lot of commentary around that. And because AI is the new buzz acronym, so the question is it AI or is it artificial intelligence? So I'm natural intelligence, there's artificial intelligence, but I'm trying to find convergence between both.
Right. And I guess that makes you the most suitable person to talk about what will be some of the questions I'll be asking you today.
Hopefully.
Okay. So just like you mentioned, AI, data protection, data privacy, they're rather new, but rather they're evolving very rapidly. So what would you say is that one habit that people have digitally that you feel or that you think, I can never understand this? So what would you say is that one thing that people do that you just find almost cringe-like, if you like?
So I wouldn't say that I can't understand it. I can understand it from the perspective. The one thing I would say, because I think it's human nature and the desire to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood, is the phenomenal amount of personal data that people tend to post online and share on their own volition without necessarily anybody encouraging or asking for it, and how quickly or sometimes carelessly we volunteer personal data. And we're all guilty of it in some shape or form or the other. So this is not, I can't even say that I'm entirely blameless, but certainly there's just that default or habit in a lot of people now to just, not to understand that some data is personal data,
right,
and that we have to be a bit circumspect in terms of how we share that data publicly.
Right. I like the fact that you kind of linked it to the next question I'm going to ask, because a lot of people begin to then wonder that in this day and age, what does this look like? What does privacy mean for me as an average Nigerian? So my next question is, when it comes to some of these digital platforms, do you think that people fully understand what they're getting into before they begin to use a particular platform?
I think the general answer I would give is that most people do not. They accept terms and conditions, for instance, without reading them. And I know that those terms and conditions sometimes are so lengthy that it's quite difficult and they may appear complex. And that's perhaps another area to consider or to look at, and I'm sure our regulators are also considering. But even in terms of the things that are more obvious, what we accept, what we download, where we onboard ourselves. There's so many nuances to it in terms of, is it all apps that you need to be on?
Right.
For what you need to do. So the same way there's a responsibility on the side of, say, the providers of these technology solutions. There's also a responsibility on the side of the data subjects as well, which is individuals like myself, yourself, who own the personal data, to understand that we have something that's valuable and we have to be careful, in terms of how we use it, how we upload it to various platforms, and to pause a bit more conscious and intentional in what we download, who downloads it, who uses it. Because sometimes there's also the questions with regards to appropriateness of age, appropriateness of use, and to be able to have a greater awareness as to the potential impact of of the technology that we use on a day-to-day basis or periodically.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And like you mentioned earlier, some of us are quite guilty of just, I need to use this thing. I'm not going to bother reading it because really some of them are like PhD dissertations, if you ask me. But zoning into one of the things you mentioned with respect to like the businesses themselves, what would you say is one area where you feel like maybe as a business, this is one area where I'm most exposed when it comes to the management of personal data, like you put it?
So from businesses?
Yes, for businesses specifically.
Specifically,
Yes.
okay. So, I mean, businesses have there's an onus on a business who would tend to be a data controller or a data processor to understand the weight of that responsibility. And I mean, the biggest risk that they potentially face in the data protection space, there's a protection of the data that they collect and process. I wouldn't say that there's a single risk, but with regards to, for instance, if you want to deploy a platform or you want to go into, I may be jumping ahead now, but in terms of say there's a new technological area you want to delve into, the law actually requires you to conduct what is called a data privacy impact assessment, DPIA, to assess the risks that particular solution or app or technology is going to present. And then you also put in mitigating factors if you're going to go ahead, or you have a privacy by design methodology that you apply to ensure that you're able to foresee what could happen, and then you solve for those risks in terms of how you then design your put in place your data protection policies and the data privacy that you afford the data subjects as well. So there are various risks, and it depends on the industry. It depends on the environment. It depends even on the users, the potential users of that particular technology. So if you're designing, for instance, if it's technology for schools, it's a different risk.
Right.
If it's a technology for older citizens, if it's a technology for just for health, again, sensitive data, right? Then the requirements and the risks are different. If it's a payment platform, for instance, then you have risk of fraud and all those things that people wanting to get their hands on funds and things like that. So depending on the industry and the use, then the risks and also even the time. The timing also matters, because when a company first goes into business, it's supposed to conduct a DPIA.
Right.
But given that there are many businesses that were in place at the time the laws were passed, it then becomes, doing a DPIA, for instance, for all the uses that it has for personal data. And then from there on, when there's new products or new technologies to be deployed, conducting that risk assessment for those purposes.
And just listening, it just sometimes sounds like there's just a lot for these data processors and controllers to bear in. There are a lot of things for them to bear in mind. So I know you've spoken a bit, all the things you've shared just now really apply more to businesses, processors and controllers alike. But when it comes to like the bigger picture in terms of privacy, are there any other stakeholders that play just as much a critical role in the data privacy conversation?
Certainly there are other stakeholders, and the data subjects themselves have rights, but also have responsibilities as well. So a data subject, for instance, cannot just relax and say all the responsibility lies on the controller. Sometimes, as we've spoken about initially, there's a tendency to overshare.
Right.
Somebody asks you for X, you give them A to Z, because, for instance, if you're applying for work, they may just ask for, your name. And, before you know it, you've provided your gender, your marital status, your local government area, your religion, just in case, that may help you to get the job.
Yeah.
So there's just that tendency of when, to overshare depending on what the requirements are. We also do that in the case of visa applications and things like that. But so that responsibility as well on data subjects as well, in addition to the processors and to the controllers. And I'll just mention at this point that the data processor may be different from the data controller, because a data controller may outsource some of the processing activities to, or have a relationship, or they require the services of a third party company who is known as the processor, who does things at their direction or control.
Yeah.
And then in that case, they are also stakeholders in that process who have to ensure that they also meet the required standards of the law, and that the controller ensures that they also meet that standard as well. And then, there's other people in the ecosystem as well that that are also stakeholders, but there's a duty on every stakeholder within that ecosystem to ensure that they adhere to the requirements of the law with regards to how data is collected, how it's processed, even right up to when that data is discarded or disposed of, at its end of life or whatever it is.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. In terms of data protection in Nigeria, we know that the NDPC is doing a lot of work in this regard. So where would you say the role of the regulator is in terms of the overall data protection ecosystem in Nigeria? What would you say their role is really?
So the role of the Nigerian Data Protection Commission is pivotal, because they clearly set the regulatory landscape. First, we have a law that was passed in 2023. And prior to that, which again underscores the importance of the regulator had, under the auspices of NITDA that existed before, which still exists, but had the broad overview. They had issued regulations, Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, and then also the framework that followed that, just to ensure that there's guidance as to how data privacy protection is practiced, and upholding the rights of the citizens. But and then the law was passed, clearly with the input of the commission, and also input of various stakeholders as well, and was signed into law in 2023. And since then, the commission has come out with further guidelines, regulations, and most recently with the guide, which is actually the acronym is GAID, but they just come out with with what is a guide for the implementation and execution of the Data Protection Act, the Nigerian Data Protection Act.
Yeah, I think it just seems to be a lot to unpack, really, because like we've established, the law itself is about 3 years old this year, but it's come at a time where even globally these are things that's been talked about. Okay, so maybe going back again to, because as you were just speaking, I was trying to bucket, who has the biggest risks. Yes, there are risks to data subjects when they overshare. But in terms of data controllers, I think the real question I have now is, what do you see as a biggest challenge that some businesses may face when it comes to just embedding this data or trying to comply with these data protection laws and regulations? So what would you say is like the biggest risk for them in terms of compliance generally?
Well, knowing that companies are very interested in their bottom line, and they always sort of focus on that. One of the biggest risks to consider is that you may become the subject of an investigation.
Right.
And if you become the subject of an investigation and the company is found wanting, then they may be subject to a fine or a remedial fee, which obviously means you then have to cough up, money to pay to settle those obligations because of non-compliance. So being found non-compliant is certainly a bigger risk after an investigation. Now, the fact of the investigation itself has even a brand impact.
True.
Because there's nobody in business who wants to have it announced that they're the subject of an investigation. And because it may also have an impact on their clients, have an impact on, if it's a retail product, on how the market views them, how their partners view them. It could be a bank, it could be their financiers or counterparties outside of the country may view them in a negative light. So it has a brand impact and reputation as well. So if, for instance, a company, has lost financially sensitive data over, and when I use sensitive, I mean just in terms of, say account numbers, so account numbers of data subjects, right? Then there's a possibility that signing on new customers may be difficult. You have to then put in place a campaign, for instance, to reconvince customers and potential clients that, that we've cleaned this up, we've addressed it, we've put in place these protections to ensure that your account numbers are secure, nobody's going to hack into your account, or we've put in place this, remediation measures to prevent a reoccurrence of that data loss or breach that occurred. So cybersecurity is a critical aspect of data protection as well, because then you have bad actors that can then try to gain, an advantage by unlawful access or theft of data, or and sometimes it's just a careless access to data that has occurred. So it's important for companies to ensure that they understand that those risks are mitigated, or in some cases also it's, it could also be quite harmful as well for companies, because if sensitive data, for instance, of a that is held by a healthcare provider is disclosed in large measures, it can have an impact on populations, can have an impact on various aspects of life, right? So, and it can cause various things that can impact on individuals, or the data subjects. So companies really have a large responsibility with regards to how they to the risks they face when they have that responsibility and that privilege of holding personal data.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're coming to an end gradually, but for you've touched on so many different things on the part of the regulators, on the part of the data processors, controllers, as the case may be, on the part of data subjects themselves. But if we're to paint a picture of what trust in this digital age looks like, what would you say that means to you? So what does trust look like? I mean, there's so many things like you mentioned earlier, literally everything is done on like a mobile device these days. I mean, increasingly we're having to go less and less to certain places. So what would trust in all of these different moving parts look like for you?
I think that given that, technology, as you said, we're in the digital age, right? In a digital age. And that digital age is not static. If you think about your young lady, I think certainly relative to my good self. But if you think about, I started work at a time when we didn't have personal computers, right? So, so technology has moved in leaps and bounds since then, and it's going to do so. It's going to keep moving. So, what trust means is that at every point in time, that the data controllers, the creators, and the companies that drive this, groundbreaking innovation at every point in time take into consideration the rights, right, and the impact that it may have on the data subject, and continue to solve for the risks that exist in the technology that they're providing. So AI is at a stage now where we're using solutions like ChatGPT, we're using DeepSeek and things like that, but it still has a long way to go in terms of how we use it, how we understand it, and that understanding is critical, right? For people to not to understand, not to feel as if sometimes using AI, some people feel as if it's like their little personal domain, that I put something personal into it and it's just me. It's just me and my chat GPT, whereas that's not the case unless you have a certain, particularly if you're using the free service. But unless you have like an enterprise solution that that has been confirmed to be a ring-fenced environment for your institution, then you have to understand that it's a large language model that continues to learn, and so that your data then becomes available for those purposes, and to that extent, you have to ring fence or to curate what it is you want to post in there for to be used in the processing of the whether it's a prompt or whatever it is that you've put in. So that trust lies on all sides. But certainly it's extremely important for the technology companies, for the data controllers to ensure that stakeholders feel that put them at the forefront of the thinking, and to also understand the vulnerabilities of the populations as well, and continue to adhere to evolving regulation and laws. And also there's the trust as well in the regulators as well, that my regulator will protect me. My regulator will continue to try to keep up with technology, because technology tends to run ahead of regulation.
Right.
So there's a big onus on regulators to continue to improve themselves and to keep up to speed if possible. It's very difficult, but to certainly keep abreast of developments in the industry. And that trust means that for users of the various solutions, and for the communities and stakeholders to feel confident that, when they put their personal data in the hands of a company or a solution provider, that it is used for the purposes for which they have given it, and that company considers the itself as a steward of that personal data that has been placed within its custody, and uses it appropriately. Obviously, that's very general. There's so many other nuances to it, particularly when individuals themselves decide to publish personal data. So there's additional nuances and complexities to those sorts of arrangements, right, as to where responsibility is, and on the trust question and all of that. But and each is on a case by case basis.
Absolutely.
But certainly, as we evolve in this wonderful digital age or technology, and as technology continues to drive innovation, continues to drive technology, then it's important that more and more we have that understanding that the rights of the data subjects will be upheld.
Right. Thank you. So we're going to be taking maybe not a break, but just to demystify some myths that some people tend to have. So I'm going to be asking some true or false questions, and if you want to explain it if you want to expatiate rather on any one of them, please feel free to. So there's one here that I have that someone says, if I have nothing to hide, privacy doesn't matter.
I would say it's false. It's not a question of hiding, right? It's a question of what is private to you. And you don't have anything to hide, but are you going to go around with sharing your account details, your account balances, your passwords, your personal sensitive information about your health? You're not going to go about disclosing that to everybody.
Right.
You share information with people on a need-to-know basis. And that's why, even with regards to individuals, so some of the principles of data protection include data minimization, purpose limitation, and all those things. So you provide data to people on a need-to-know basis, and you don't give more than is required for the purposes for which it is required. So even though those are principles for the data controller and data processor, but if you flip that around for the data subjects as well. It's not a question of hiding, but it's a question of being responsible with your personal data as well.
Yeah. Great. Another statement I have here is once I click accept, I lose all my rights. So accept to terms and conditions like you mentioned earlier, or yes, just gets me to this platform so I can use it. So once I click accept, I lose all my rights. Is that true or false?
I would say that is also false. When you click accept, indeed, it creates, sometimes you're accepting, you're giving consent to the use of your data in a certain way. Sometimes the acceptance is the acceptance of a contract. So in terms of the terms and conditions by which your data is utilized, your personal data is utilized. So depending on what you're accepting, and you need to inform yourself as to what it is you're accepting by reading or paying attention. Sometimes, and we talk about sometimes the contracts being lengthy, but indeed, it could be just like a bubble, right? And even that we don't read. We just see the green, we click on it because you want to jump to the next stage of that app that you're trying to download, so you barely read anything. So it doesn't mean that you lose rights to your personal data. It just governs the rights that you have, and also the responsibilities that you have, and what it is that is the relationship between you and that platform. And certainly, we're in an age where the technology has made life so much easier for us. And that's why we have a lot of these technology solutions and apps. So, and companies have invested phenomenal amounts of money into developing such products, right? So to the extent that these companies have invested and are doing a business and they're in it for business, it's important as well that for data subjects to also understand what their own rights and responsibilities are with regards to that relationship and contracts, and even with regards to what is a shared community of users on a platform. And the relationship with amongst that community of users as well, and how in how the data subjects can also protect themselves and the use for which their personal data would be, how their personal data will be utilized.
Yeah, I think that does sound that definitely does sound really good, because usually there's the tendency to say, "Oh, I never agreed to this. Why are they doing this?" But because the data subjects themselves didn't pause to actually understand what they were agreeing to, it now looks as though the data processor is misusing your data when indeed they had given their consent at the outset. That's definitely something I'm going to be paying more attention to.
And I would also even add that now, by regulation and law in some cases, all the consents or you would tend to have a single contract, but all the consents or the various steps are not necessarily all collectively done at the same time.
Right.
As you are using a platform, you would see that along the lines, when you want to use a new feature or you want to use a new aspect of it, it will ask you again, do you consent to this? Or it will, or sometimes you're referred back to the original contract, or there's certain steps that you take that will disclose to you that you're moving into a different sort of arrangement on this particular platform. So again, it's to give pause to a data subject so that the data subject can then have another opportunity to think and then to progress further if they want to, if they wish to say, okay, I want more of these services, or I want a different type of services in this direction on this same platform that was already previously using. And you then, it gives you another opportunity to sign up, and then you're also told how to protect yourself if you want another layer of protection through your settings or through accepting certain features or what you click on and what you or the features you don't utilize. So to be honest, the regulators are really quite robust in terms of all the minutiae of the regulation as to those acceptances. And I think more and more the technology companies are certainly taking it seriously, but also in terms of the the layers that is required to ensure that you have an informed user, are being put in place by the regulator so that the users as well increase their awareness,
Right.
and then also take greater responsibility as they delve deeper and deeper into the use of a solution as well.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I was jotting a lot of things down because I like the points that you made with respect to how technology and even innovation generally is moving so quickly that sometimes it looks like, regulations and even just this whole conversation on data privacy is playing catch up. But it's a daunting task, not an impossible one. And I trust that our viewers would have learned a thing or two. So in closing, like Adeolu already mentioned, or AI, the partner, the human being, she mentioned that, when it comes to privacy, it's not about hiding. It's about trust, it's about responsibility, and it's about care that once I give you my data, it will be cared for. It's not a case of convenience on the part of the data processors and controllers. So with that, thank you so much for spending a part of your afternoon with me. And thank you to our wonderful viewers who have stuck with us up until this time. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.